and they're $1 or $2 a kilo, and we turn it into a product of $40 plus a kilo. So it's a good kind of circular economy story for them. The more successful we are, the more raw material we're buying for them. But I guess they're also interested in the bigger picture as well and kind of coming along the journey with us. They see the world very similarly to us. I think it was a bit of a no-brainer for them investing because strategically we're very much within their wheelhouse. Hi, my name is Ellie Whelan. I am the CEO and co-founder of Just Meat Protein. We're a food tech company which is taking low-value cuts of meat and turning them into really high-value, nutrient-dense ingredients.
Hi, I'm Aarti Tobin. I am the CSO at Just Meat Protein, and I'm the scientist behind the tech.
Amazing. And you guys recently raised a successful round.
Yes, we did. We've just closed our seed round a couple of weeks ago now of 1.8 million. Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations. And how did you meet your lead investor in this round?
So our lead investor is kind of a strategic corporate investor called Ingham's Enterprises. We met them probably almost 3 years ago now, would you say, Aarti? Yeah, we met them while we were both still working in CSIRO, and at that point the tech behind Just Meat Protein was still a research project inside CSIRO. And one of our team members had a contact in Ingham's, the then COO of the company through a previous role. So we reached out to them through them and started conversations. Initially, it was just at the time in the tech journey, we were making a switch from using beef in our process to looking at other raw material sources, just because beef is quite an expensive raw material. So we were looking to find something a bit cheaper. And poultry was one of our options. So that's where we wanted to talk to Ingham's. They're a very large poultry processor. So initially the conversation was just around, hey, what kind of raw materials would you have available for a process like this? And we continued to work with them over a period of probably about 12 months. With the trial work we were doing in CSIRO at the time, and they were providing us with the raw material that we were using in the process.
Okay, amazing. So this was a strategic investor that you worked with when you were working at this government agency that was doing development, R&D, and the relationship got built through that initial R&D work from both sides. Their interest was to sell low-cost meats into your process that could be converted into this powder, which I guess for simpler terms is more like a whey protein replacement. Would that be an accurate way of what you're doing?
Yeah, essentially it's an alternative ingredient that can be used instead of a whey protein isolate. So it's similar to whey protein isolate in that it's about 90% protein. It comes in a powdered form, but our product also has added benefits, things like it's really highly soluble. So when you put it in solution and give it a shake, it actually dissolves and stays in solution, which whey protein doesn't necessarily do. And also has clarity in solution. So for things like beverages, protein waters, those types of things where you want the solution to be transparent, our product allows you to formulate with products like that.
Okay, so actually I want to just double click on this because this is super cool, right? And everybody is essentially walking around with pea protein, the whey protein, and every single thing you can imagine. So take me, and it kind of takes me back to how actually I got into food tech, which was there were individuals asking me, in my opinion, about insect protein, right? And that was kind of that was a thought that this was going to succeed, right? There was a thought like, look, it's kind of adopted in certain Asian countries. So if you take me to this notion of this, of this solution, right? First of all, am I going to imagine the usability of this? Do you need to shake it first before consuming for it to be totally soluble, or it can be at almost look like water essentially, and you wouldn't see the powder inside?
So the way that we work is we sell it as an ingredient. So we essentially sell it as a straight powder into the likes of sports nutrition companies. And so they would then formulate it into end products that you would see on the shelves. So that might be, a powder that you make up into a shake at home. It might be a protein bar, or it could also be savory things like ready-made meals. It goes really well into things like soups and broths, gravies, those types of things, which wouldn't necessarily usually have a protein content in them. But if you put our powder in there, you can basically boost the protein content of any type of product that you're making.
Fascinating. Does it have a taste as well?
It has a slight taste, so we basically stripped out as much of the flavour as we can. But we describe it as kind of a mild brothy flavor. So it's kind of, if you think about like a stock cube, if you dissolve that into a lot of water, more water than they recommend, that's probably a similar taste. It's something that when you put it into sweet applications, you can mask it quite easily. So we've done concept products. We've put it into like an orange protein drink. So basically masked it with orange and tropical flavors. We've also done like chocolate protein balls, put it in there at levels of like 10% protein powder, and you can mask that brothy flavor by putting other flavors on top of it essentially.
But the natural application of, again, increasing the high protein applications of these cubes would seem like a natural, give that, combined with the umami flavor, you probably do really well, correct? It's for you to increase.
Every other week we toss around different product ideas. I think at the moment, like sports nutrition space leans a bit towards the sweet end of the spectrum because whey protein's such like the prominent ingredient that's used, and whey protein itself leans towards more sweet applications. But yeah, just through playing around with our ingredient, we've come up with a whole heap of different ideas, like a cup of soup that has 10 grams of protein in it, a stock cube that you could put into any meal that has protein in it. All of those types of things would be really easy to achieve with our ingredients.
I think I saw Whelan just come out with a high protein ramen, and that's kind of the savory high protein applications are quite interesting, and that seems to be probably the next step where people are gonna move to. That just sounds like a very interesting experience. So if I'm an investor, I'm just kind of going through some of the challenges I would see, and maybe you can, I think through that process, you could give us an insight how you prepare for this round. So one of the applications that comes to mind as an objection is why do I need this? I know whey protein is $14 per kg, right? So it's very expensive, right? $12. It's like high, and there's not enough of it. So are you winning on price? Are you winning, and like you definitely see, it sounds like applications you can win on in terms of they can dissolve in clear liquid, right? That sounds like something whey protein just float to the top, it will become musky. So where are you guys winning, and where do you see yourself winning long term? Again, to supply the protein needs of the consumer.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, when we first started the project, whey protein wasn't the price it is today. So I guess we've been a bit lucky in that whey protein has gone up in price pretty significantly over the last couple of years, and with that being our main competitor, that's obviously good for us. And also just the fact that you can't get your hands on whey protein at the moment. There's quite significant supply shortages. We've talked to a lot of businesses who are basically having to turn to other ingredients out of necessity because they can't buy enough whey protein isolate to make the products that they want to sell essentially. So that's kind of one end of the spectrum. Our pricing, we're basically targeting coming in at the low end of the whey protein isolate market, so we can be price competitive with whey protein, and that's where we're aiming to launch commercially. But then I guess the other side of the coin is those added value that you get through our product that you can't necessarily get in whey protein. So our ProPepta powder is really highly soluble. You can put it into solution up to about 60%, and it's still soluble. It still stays in solution. It doesn't settle to the bottom, anything like that. Whey protein is still, as soon as you get up to kind of 20%, it starts to drop out of solution pretty quickly. So you can see how a really highly soluble powder makes product formulation a lot easier and means that you can basically pack more powder into whatever product that you're making. Then I guess the other point is the clarity piece. So there are some forms of whey protein you can buy which are clear whey protein, but they are sold at a premium. They're a lot more expensive than just normal whey protein isolate, whereas ours, it just comes clear as is. We don't do anything special to it. That's how our product is.
Yeah. And I think one more thing I'd add is that because it comes from meat, it's allergen-free as well. So, dairy-based stuff can have the dairy allergy. So we are allergen-free as well.
Amazing. Yeah. But I go back to the insect experience, right? The insect assumption, right? And that's something that you probably have hit with the market. The first thing is gosh, I think, is the consumer ready for this, right? Are they in a bone broth? I can absolutely get it. Yes, high protein bone broth makes perfect sense to me. That keto application, yes, 100%. But I'm thinking about, if I take that milk, if I take the cookies and cream shake, and then I put in just meat, and it shows on the ingredient just meat. Boy, I don't know if I want to have that in my cookies and cream, right? So how do you deal with that consumer challenge, or it's
Yeah,
not a
I mean,
challenge. It's not. Your Australians love their meat. Maybe they want it in their cookies and cream.
yeah, I mean, you get mixed reactions from people. Some people, that orange protein drink that we made, some people looked at that and were like, oh, chicken powder in a drink, I don't know about that. And then they actually try it and they're like, oh, it doesn't taste like chicken at all. It's actually, really good. So you get a spectrum. We did a bit of work quite early on when it was still in CSR row. We did kind of surveys of people to get, what is the perception of a product like this? And we got reasonably positive feedback from people that they were quite receptive to a product like this, even though it's coming from meat. And I mean, you just have to look at the likes of a collagen product. Like, do you know what collagen is made from? It's made from hides and bones and things like that. Yet you walk into a supermarket, you see collagen everything, collagen hot chocolate, collagen sweet bars, all of those types of things. And the market for collagen's going crazy. People are buying a lot of the stuff. So I think there is a question there about perception, but I think it's a challenge that we'll be able to overcome in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's actually, it reminds me of collagen is one. There's also gelatin is another one, right?
Yeah.
That, if you look at a marshmallow, right? A lot of marshmallows have gelatin in them, right? And you try to think, well, where do you think that gelatin came from? Well, it could have been vegetarian. That's possible, especially with the Muslim community. I think there's a lot of demands in the food manufacturing that's asking for certain transparency in these snacks. But a lot of gelatin will not be vegetarian gelatin, right? And you Google that one and you realize that marshmallow, yep, it's a little different than you expected.
Yeah, I think people maybe just don't like to think about it too hard.
But I think to our listeners, I think what Ellie just did there is actually quite brilliant, right? Is that she basically said, well, here's a reference point of a marketing that's really been successful, right? For the beauty industry, for the consumer of the sports drinks industry, collagen seems to be really is included in those in those sweet products. It's already there, right? And it's accepted. If you open that ingredient up, you realize its source is quite similar to maybe a just meat product. So what would and Dr. Tobin, what would you label this as? Like, what is this label on the label, on the ingredient? How would you? You're not going to call it just meat because that would be just strange, right? Or are you? Like, do you just go with that? Here's your hot chocolate with just meat in it.
No, so I think on the label it will be something like a hydrolysed chicken protein or chicken protein would be how you would label it. So yeah.
Dr. Tobin, do you want to also add anything about the labeling part?
No, I think that's what Ellie said is correct, that it will be labeled as hydrolyzed chicken protein. And but we do have a name for that particular powder, and we're calling it ProPepta as well. So there's powders like hydro beef around, and sometimes on label that's what they say. So we are expecting that they might call it ProPepta, and then in brackets it might say hydrolyzed chicken protein.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. And curious, Ellie, when you were preparing for the fundraise, right? Is there something that we can try to learn from your fundraising process that was really successful? Because clearly you already had a partner, that you identify, which is a very highly strategic partner. They're, if my understanding is correct, their interest is if you're successful, you'll be able to also buy from their supply chain, right? There's certain specific cuts that they can sell off to you, and therefore they will be able to take benefit not just on the financial exit like a VC, but they'll also be able to take benefit of your supply chain resource.
Yeah, so they're, I guess, a large poultry processor. So they generate a range of poultry products. The poultry product which we use as a raw material is a very low value product for them. So they don't sell a lot of it, or in some cases find it hard to sell. So for them it's a really good opportunity to basically find an avenue for that product, but also an avenue which is kind of adding a lot of value to that product. As it is, it's only $1 or $2 a kilo, and we turn it into a product which is kind of $40 plus a kilo. So it's a good kind of circular economy story for them. So obviously, the more successful we are, the more raw material we're buying for them. But I guess they're also interested in the bigger picture as well, and kind of coming along the journey with us. They see the world very similarly to us. They want to see a world where you get more value out of every animal that's processed, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So I think it was a bit of a no-brainer for them investing, because strategically we're very much within their wheelhouse.
Yeah, and it's very fascinating that there's another company which close friends of mine, they use AI in slaughterhouses. That's applications. So computer vision in helping butchers break down animals, right? And what's interesting is that one of their investors and the investors are looking very closely are climate funds. Now, this would never have happened 3 years, 4 years ago, right? Because the notion of something that would be so associated with the animal industry for a climate fund seems contradictory. But really, if you think about what you guys are doing, is very much about sustainability. It's about taking, upcycling ingredients which are low value, creating additional value and for the consumer, and having a lower impact on the environment. Ironically, no, not ironically, but it is extremely efficient way of feeding humanity by taking what's available and making it more valuable.
Yeah, I think, probably a few years ago, meat was kind of a dirty word in the food world, and everyone was turning to plant-based, and that was the future of things. But I think more recently we've seen a bit of a turn in consumer perception back to, animal-based proteins as first and foremost a really good quality source of protein, that you don't necessarily get that same quality from plants or other sources. And then basically what you're saying, not stopping what we're doing, but producing meat in a more sustainable, more efficient way is kind of, just as valuable as moving away from meat entirely.
Yeah, that's my position personally, and that's why I'm a huge supporter of also companies like Better Meat Co., which are doing more hybrid products, where you're looking at mixing meat with plant-based rather than totally entirely replacing, right? That just, from a consumer standpoint, I think it's much more acceptable. Now, Ellie, what were some of the biggest objections you had to face? And how did you face them in the fundraising round? Like, what were the things that people are coming back to all the time? And you said, look, no, this is our position. This is how I believe we're able to succeed. I speak with founders raising every day, and they're all telling me the same thing. It's harder than ever to find investors who are actually deploying. And getting access to those leads takes time founders just don't have. Every month fundraising is a month burning runway. This is why we created FTW Plus, a community of founders actively fundraising. The world's most accurate agri-food tech investor database, plus connecting you directly to ideal target investors and a community of support and accountability. Guaranteed results or your money back. Apply today at www.joinftw.com/hub.
Yeah, good question. I mean, we ironically, with a company name like Just Meat Protein, we get a lot of people assuming we're a plant-based protein ingredient, which is interesting. We've had to explain that to a few people. I mean, you still get the people who, very much believe in the plant-based future and are not interested in investing in meat and that type of thing. And, it's a bit difficult to overcome that, because that's, the core of what we're doing. I think for us, the scale-up manufacturing was a bit of a risk to investors. Like, while we were working on the project within CSIRO, we did some scale-up work and we were able to do kind of some pilot scale trials. But that next phase for us is really working our way up to commercial production, which is quite a big step. And also kind of finding the right partner to be able to do that. We kind of thought we'd be able to find someone in Australia to basically produce the powder for us with the right equipment and that type of things. And we probably spent, what was it, Aarti, over 12 months looking.
Yeah, and we did not find anybody in Australia. Either they didn't have the right equipment or they didn't have extra capacity to make it for us. Then the other thing was we were bringing in chicken into the facility, so some people were, not open to bringing in another species. And so there was like lots of different logistical reasons we could not actually find manufacturing in Australia. And so we had to kind of go looking, outside of Australia for manufacturing.
Yeah, I think we've managed to find some options for us going forward. But, while we were doing the raise, this was kind of still quite uncertain. So it was a risk for investors, and for some investors it was, a bit too much of a risk, and, they'd send us away and say, come back when you've got a partner and you've got someone who can produce it. But yeah, we now are in a better position with some solid options for scale-up manufacturing.
Okay, great. And this is actually a really great opportunity to have the CSO here as well. So I'm curious, Dr. Tobin. I find this a challenge because I'm on the sales side, right? I'm more in the fundraising side, and I sometimes get very frustrated with CSOs because I tell them just how much money do I need to raise for you to be 100% certain this will work? Just tell me. It can be some godforsaken crazy number. I don't even care. Just tell me the number. And if I give you this number, you have to promise me 100% this will work. And I find a lot of scientists are like, well, maybe it'll work. Like, I can't guarantee. I was like, $1 billion. I don't know. Well, I find this very funny because you're for sure certain I need to raise my money, but you can't be certain you're going to actually get the scientific milestones. So how do you know that your process can scale in the CDMO rather than just in a lab scale? How do you know this can actually work?
Yeah. Okay. So when we were in CSIRO, we did start off in the lab scale, but we did scale it up to 300 liter batches in CSIRO. So we went for, say, 30 grams. So we had, to 300 liters. And then from 300 liters, we also did trials at 2,000 and 2,500 liters as well. So we did do that sort of gradual scaling up of that and optimize the process at the 300 liter level. And then we were then scaled it up and we were able to do, larger scale trials where we successfully produced the powder similar to what we were producing when we were doing the 300 liters. So I'm pretty confident from those large 2,000, 2,500 liter trials that we did, that then going up to, say, 5,000, 10,000 liters, I'm pretty confident that we will be able to produce the same quality of product.
So what your answer, Billy, this is a beautiful answer, is look, we scaled up to a certain amount, and that scale gives us confidence the larger scales will be true as well, right? And we were able to hit the titers that we were looking to get. The downstream was successful. The quality of the percent of protein available was consistent, and therefore we feel confident that we can scale up effectively with this tech.
Yeah. So we did do for those 2,500 liter batches that we did use miniature form of commercial equipment, and we had everything connected up like you would in a factory. So we did run it in that way. So that's what sort of has given me that confidence that, now if you went from the 2.5 to going to 5 or 10,000 liter batches, that it will work.
Okay, amazing. That sounds like a great way to handle the objection. See, Dr. Tobin is a natural. That's it. Give her the money. I love it. Ellie, last two questions. Just curious. Did you use any vendors while for the fundraising process, like creating a deck? Or did you guys do it in house? What did you guys use for data room? Was it just simple Notion or Google Drive? Just so we get a sense. We'd like to understand what are people doing currently from a technology or from any tools that they've tapped into from the deck design, data room, anything we should know that's working.
Yeah, I mean, we went a pretty bare bones approach. I guess my background is commercialization. I've worked with startups for most of my career, so I kind of have the expertise to develop the deck and the investment materials and things like that. And I was pretty confident that we could run the investment round ourselves. So we did majority of it ourselves. I did the design work. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but I've learned how to use Canva a bit better over the last 12 months. For our data room, we actually just used a Microsoft Teams kind of area.
OneDrive.
And yeah, we basically created a Microsoft Teams specifically for our data room. And then we had basically a front door so we could see who was going into that data room. So again, went for the cheap approach, so we didn't have to pay for some fancy software. Because, we were just trying to keep it as low cost as possible. That was our approach, and it worked. Yeah.
And then the last one is give us a sense of the grant landscape. There's two things. Obviously, this is you came out of a government institution, so there had to be some agreement put in place to commercialize the tech. Maybe you could provide some guidance, some best practices around how that can work, because often I've seen deals just fall apart because investors say, look, I don't have the confidence this tech is actually being owned by you. It's by the university. They're not on your cap table. They can license somebody else. There's no defensive moat here. So take us through a little bit of, hey, this is the way we looked at commercialization agreement with the government entity. And also in Australia, this is how we leverage government grants, or we think we can leverage government grants to scale our solution.
Yeah, sure. So the tech itself was developed over about 4 years inside CSIRO. So CSIRO, contributed quite a significant amount of funding towards the development of the tech. And so the way we approached commercialization was that we basically pitched to them a straight license for royalties. So they are not on our cap table, but obviously as soon as we start selling, the money flows back to CSRO through a royalty arrangement. I guess we did that on purpose just because speaking to a few investors around, there was a bit of a negative sentiment around having a research organisation or a university on your cap table and kind of the value that they provide into the future for the business, and also making sure that the founders are correctly incentivized through the right shareholding. So we felt the license for royalty was a very simplistic arrangement to kind of get around that sentiment with investors. And the way that we kind of built some certainty around the IP within that is essentially, first of all, it's an exclusive worldwide license. So we have all of the rights. They're not able to license the technology to anyone else. And then the other thing as well is we built in some triggers for assignment. So there's certain milestones where if we meet those, we can request assignment of the technology over to us. And then of course Aarti is the scientist and the brains behind the technology. So, you've got the technology, but you've also got her as well as a key piece of the puzzle. So those are all kind of add up to the proposition for us and something that investors are willing to invest in.
Ellie, you mentioned that if you hit a certain revenue threshold, you actually get the whole IP. Meaning, if you essentially pay out in royalties some amount, you can get ownership of it. Is that what you mentioned as well?
It's a bit more complex than that. So there's certain things that we basically, if we meet those milestones, we can trigger basically us requesting assignment of the IP over. Obviously, that IP has value. There'll be a determination of what that value is. So it's not just a simple they give it to us, but there is a mechanism built into the license to account for that.
Amazing. This is great. I love the structure. And by the way, for our listeners, again, this is a note. I've seen this a lot. I think it's a really brilliant way of, you can leverage all of that investment that was done through university or through a public institution that investors didn't have to pay for, and you create a commercialization strategy on how to take it out of those hands. It just makes a lot of sense, right? Investors like that deal a lot if it's structured correctly. I've seen a lot of deals fall apart really badly based on the university saying they want a big percentage of the equity of the company, and that's usually when they fall apart.
Yeah, and I think every deal is a little bit different. And, there's things like Aarti and I both left our roles at CSIRO to go full-time in the company to remove the conflict of interest. And there's, other kind of details in there as well that you have to take into account. But for us, this pathway worked really well.
Okay, excellent. Just to take us out, one is just curiosity about matching grants at the government level. Maybe you could talk just to give our listeners who are not from Australia an understanding of, if we raise money, sometimes the government takes a non-dilutive position or a dilutive position. Anything else there that we need to know about?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of grants in the pipeline at the moment. There's a range of different grants in Australia, both at a state level and a federal level. The majority of them, the way that it operates, it's a co-funding arrangement. So it's essentially you need to put in, most of the times it's 50% of the funding towards a project, and then they'll put in the other 50% as a non-dilutive contribution. So I guess for us, we had to close that seed round first and get that private matching investment to then take advantage of the grant funding.
Ellie, to close us out, we're obviously a community of founders globally, investors, corporates. How can you help us? I mean, you've been very generous, and Dr. Tobin as well. Is there something that, a certain founder or a scientist who's listening to this may say, hey, Ellie or Dr. Tobin can give this to us? Anything that you recommend?
I think if anyone's got questions about the Australian food tech landscape, we, have some expertise in that area. I guess the other thing as well would be anyone interested in hearing about the experience of working with a corporate investor as your lead investor. Would be the other one. Aarti, have you got anything else?
Yeah, my background is very much in the food industry. I know processing technologies, people. So if any food tech companies want to come in and know more about that kind of stuff in Australia, I'd be happy to help from a technical perspective. Yeah.
Amazing.
Aarti's playing it down. She's very, very highly skilled in the food space.
And then how can we help you over the next 12 months? If I'm listening to this, what does Ellie and Dr. Tobin need over the next 12 months?
I guess our next 12 months is really highly hyper-focused on scale-up manufacturing and commercial launch of our products. So I guess, we talked a bit about the contract manufacturers, and we're still open to meeting new potential contract manufacturers, and that could be anywhere in the world. So if you know someone who works in that space, we'd be keen to chat. And then I guess the other end of it is the customer side. So if you know anyone developing a new product which is focused on having high protein, I think they'd probably really benefit from trialing our products and their product development. So please reach out.
And from the contract manufacturers, what kind of equipment are you looking for? Like what? Obviously, they have to feel comfortable taking in animal products inside, chicken animal products inside of their facility. But are there other things that specifically from the manufacturing side that need to be in place?
I think the big one would be a spray dryer. That's kind of the piece of kit that's hard to get your hands on. So that's the first step. And then the other parts of the process are a bit flexible, but kind of hydrolysis equipment, is the other key one.
Amazing. Ellie, Aarti, Dr. Tobin, such a pleasure to speak with you guys, and wishing you guys tremendous success.
You too. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
One more thing. Don't close this episode yet. If you got value from this conversation, here's what I need from you. A 5-star rating, 1 comment, 20 seconds of your time. That's the deal. A 5-star rating means more founders find this content, and every time a founder raises, all boats are elevated. Every week, I pick one random comment and send that person a complimentary copy of Investment Climate, the book. 50 sales playbooks from founders who actually raise money during the fundraising winter. Real strategies, real closes, real numbers, not theory. So if you want a copy, comment below, and if you haven't followed the show yet, do that too. And if there's a guest you want us to bring on the show, just drop us a note or send us an email. We'll read each and every one. Until then, keep on raising.